It all started in April 2006 in Columbus, Ohio, when Brian Shaffer, a young medical student, was finishing a well-earned spring break. He had a loving girlfriend, a tight group of friends, and a bright future ahead of him. On the surface, he was the kind of guy who had it all figured out, but no one could have imagined that one night, he'd simply disappear. Brian walked into a bar on a crowded night, surrounded by people, security cameras, and his friends, yet was never seen again. No struggle, no witnesses, and no trace. And yet, almost 20 years later, we still don't know how it happened. This is the story of Brian Shaffer, the man who vanished. It was the end of spring break, Friday, March 31st, 2006. Brian and his dad, Randy, grabbed dinner at a steakhouse earlier in the evening, and they had a talk about the trip to Miami Brian and his girlfriend, Alexis Wagner, had just returned from. After dinner, Brian met up with his two friends, Clint Florence and Meredith Reed. To celebrate the end of break, they bar hopped around the Arena district of Columbus, eventually landing at a popular spot called the Ugly Tuna Saloona around 1:15 a.m. Security footage shows Brian laughing and talking with his friends as they ride the escalator up to the bar's entrance. While inside, they ordered more drinks and began to party. The place was packed, the music loud, the lights dim. It was a blur of faces melting together as time slips away. Around 1:55 a.m., cameras outside the bar catch Brian stepping outside with two young women near the entrance. He chats for a minute, smiles, waves, and heads back inside the bar. That was the last time Brian was ever seen. Clint and Meredith waited inside for a while, assuming he'd gone to the restroom or was talking to someone. But when the bar began to close, Brian was nowhere to be found. They called his phone, searched the bar, and even checked outside, but when they couldn't find him, they assumed maybe he was drunk and found a ride home. However, when morning came, Brian still hadn't turned up. Not at his apartment, not at his girlfriend's place, not anywhere. And that's when the fun night out turned into something far darker. Because when the security footage was pulled, it showed Brian walking into the bar, but it didn't show him walking out. The entrance and exit were the same, one single door, captured clearly on camera. Investigators rewound it frame by frame. Dozens of people went in and out, including Brian's friends, but Brian never appeared again. So how could someone walk into a crowded bar under multiple security cameras and just vanish? Police discovered a few possible explanations, like the bar being under heavy renovation at the time. There was a construction area in the back that led to other buildings, but that exit was not open to the public, and Brian would have been seen on the street cameras when he came out the building. Some suspected he may have changed clothes, disguised himself, and walked out unnoticed. But again, no clothes, no footage, no witnesses, and no reason to do so. It's as if the moment he walked back through that doorway, he stepped off the map completely. Columbus police launched a massive search. They checked dumpsters, rooftops, sewers, and construction zones, anything within a few blocks of the bar. Dogs had followed Brian's scent briefly towards the escalator, but they lost it almost immediately. His bank accounts, credit cards, and cell phones all went silent. For days, volunteers and officers scoured the area. Helicopters with thermal imaging flew overhead. Divers even searched the nearby river. They all found nothing. Detectives interviewed everyone who'd been with Brian that night. Florence, the friend who'd gone out with him, refused to take a polygraph test, and the police called him uncooperative. Alexis, Brian's girlfriend, called his phone every day. It would go straight to voicemail.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic
However,
voice
one
message
night,
system.
months later,
At the tone-
when she called, it actually rang 3 times before cutting off. Singular Wireless said it might have been a glitch, a momentary ping off a cell tower in Hilliard, Ohio. But to Alexis, it was something more. It meant hope. But that hope would fade fast. Brian Shaffer was officially declared missing, and the case went cold. As the months passed, suspicion began to fall on those closest to Brian. Clint Florence was suspect number 1. He was the last person to see him, but he maintained that he had no idea what happened. However, his refusal to take a lie detector test made people question him. His lawyer later said that police had already mishandled the case, and that Clint simply didn't trust them. He didn't want to involve himself with a situation that was handled so unprofessionally. Alexis, meanwhile, was devastated. She kept calling Brian's phone long after police told her it wouldn't matter. She left voicemails every day and checked every new lead, and refused to give up searching. Randy Shaffer, Brian's father, he became the heart of the search. He drove through neighborhoods, hung flyers, and refused to ever stop believing that his son Brian was out there and alive. Sadly, in 2008, tragedy came again. Randy was struck by a falling tree during a storm. Randy died. When news of his death spread, an anonymous comment appeared on his memorial page. It read, "Dad, I love you. Brian, from the U.S. Virgin Islands." This changed everything. Alexis finally thought she had proof Brian was alive, but sadly, police traced the post and found it was probably a hoax. It was sent through a public proxy, basically a server that hides the real sender's identity. Anyone can use it to appear anonymous online, and just like that, another cruel twist in this already haunting mystery. Nearly 20 years later, theories about what happened to Brian Shaffer still divide investigators today. The first theory is some people believe Brian was murdered, possibly after leaving the bar through the back route, maybe a fight, maybe a random attack, or maybe a calculated attack that was planned to perfection and his body was smuggled out of the building. However, there was no blood, no witness, and no body, so no one can really say for sure. The next theory is that it was all an accident. The bar was under construction, and in one area there were things like open pits, scaffolding, debris, and areas you could fall. Maybe Brian wandered into a restricted area and fell to his death. The problem with this theory is even after years of remodeling, no remains have ever been found. For theory 3, we have the fresh start theory. You see, some claim Brian wanted to escape his life. He'd recently lost his mother to cancer, and friends said he'd been struggling emotionally. His love of tropical music and the idea of starting fresh fueled speculation that he may have run away to somewhere like the Virgin Islands. The post to his dad's memorial, signed from the Virgin Islands, adds a bit of possibility to this theory. But there's still one glaring issue. Brian left his wallet, his keys, and his car. How? The last theory is the one people hate to admit. Maybe the truth is something no one would consider, something that defies reason. A perfect disappearance in plain sight, as if he slipped from this dimension. Somehow Brian got out unseen. The only question left is how. In the years since, the case has become one of the most baffling modern disappearances ever caught on camera. Online forums have dissected every frame of the surveillance footage. Some claim to see hidden faces, shadows, or figures moving in the background. Others simply believe the camera angle simply never captured the moment he left. Brian's brother, Derek Shaffer, he still believes someone out there knows what happened. That silence, that's what keeps the truth buried. For police, the file remains open, but no new evidence has ever surfaced. Not a wallet, not a bone, not a single clue. And that is where this mystery ends, with the sad reality that sometimes the impossible is possible.